I left my husband due to my evil stepdaughter. Hi everyone. I don't know if this is even ethical because it's about a minor. I will keep it anonymous and hope for the best. I am at the end of my tether here and I feel paralyzed and in desperate need of advice. I, 38, met my husband, 44, about 4 years ago. I'm 8 weeks pregnant, only husband and I know. I have a son, 8, with my boyfriend who passed away in a car accident before my son was born. My husband has a daughter, 13, SD for stepdaughter, from a previous marriage. SD lives with us every other week. When we got married, my ex-wife tried everything to get full custody of SD and failed, but it was made very clear to me, by SD, ex-wife and husband, that I am not her mother and am not allowed to participate in raising her. SD basically ignored me and my son for weeks. It wasn't perfect but it wasn't hurting anyone directly. My son learned very early not to cross SD and kept to himself when she was around. I suspected ex-wife behind SD's coldness towards me and thought this must be hard for SD with all these changes. I tried to befriend her over the years but she wasn't having it. It got worse when my ex-wife remarried and got pregnant with twins, 2 years ago. She started ignoring SD, trying to get my husband to have her more. We happily obliged, and basically stopped being a mother to her. It didn't help either that the new husband didn't like SD and wasn't shy about not wanting to raise another man's daughter. I asked my husband if we could take SD full-time and try to raise her because I saw that her mental health was deteriorating and that she needed stability. The ex-wife blatantly refused this suggestion so we continued with it every other week. The twins were born about a year ago and all went downhill from there. It seemed like the worse SD had it at her mom's, the more she hated me and my son. She would throw fits a couple of times every time she's with us. Break our stuff. Call me a beach if I tried to tell her off. It's her house because her father bought it and we're just guests. She would yell at my son and she even hit him a couple of times telling him to keep to his room if he didn't like her treatment of him. When I told her not to put her hand on my son she told me, "What are you going to do about it?" My son grew fearful of her and would ask me to take him to grandpa, late boyfriend's father, when she's living with us. I talked to my husband about it. I told him SD needed professional help because she's not feeling well and she's making us miserable when she's around. So she started to go to therapy, 6 months now. Other than that my husband didn't know what to do either. If he tried to talk to her about being nice to us, she played innocent and told him she was playing around and hugged and kissed my son in front of him. And if he tried to be stern, she threw a tantrum and accused him of loving my son more than her. 3 months ago my son's grandpa passed away. This hit my son and me very hard. My son was inconsolable for many weeks and couldn't really understand what it meant that he couldn't see grandpa again. Grandpa was a carpenter, so was my late boyfriend, so from a very young age my son loved hanging with him in the garage working. Many times when he's there he comes home with something they made together. Butter knives, boxes, chessboards, and for my 38th birthday last summer I got a stool that my son designed himself and built with his grandpa and then painted. This was the last project they had together since grandpa passed away a few weeks later, so the stool was priceless to us. We had it in the kitchen. SD made a lot of negative remarks about the stool, how ugly and poorly made it was. She laughed at my son's poor taste and he was very distraught. This was the first time however that my husband got very angry at her and asked her to go to her room. She was so scared of his reaction that she went without any protest. This Christmas South Dakota was supposed to be with her mother. On Christmas Eve, her mother dropped her off at our house very early in the morning. Her new husband had decided he didn't want her to go with them to his parents' house, where they usually spend Christmas. SD was on the verge of tears standing there listening to her mother making excuses to my husband and me. My husband hugged SD the whole time and I tried to fight away my tears. After her mom left, she went upstairs to her room to sleep. I also went to sleep since we don't usually wake up this early on holidays. My husband went to the gym and later he was going to the train station to bring my parents who were going to celebrate Christmas with us. Around 10 a.m. I heard my son screaming and crying downstairs. I ran down in horror. SD had decided to break the stool my son had built with his grandpa. She was trying to shove it in the fireplace. When she saw me she smirked and said she didn't want ugly furniture in her house. I pulled her away and told her to go to her room and tried to get the pieces of wood out of the fireplace. That was when she threw a scalding hot liquid in my face. It was hot cocoa. I yelled in pain and my son started panicking, so I ran to him to tell him that I was fine. SD stood there laughing. I took my son upstairs and went back to her. I grabbed her hard in her arm and started pulling, pushing and dragging her up to her room and locked the door. Husband came home with my parents moments later. My mom took me to the emergency room and my son insisted on coming with me. I had second-degree burns on my cheek and neck. When I went home, my husband was so mad at me for assaulting SD by using force to get her to her room. He told me I should have had compassion knowing how hurt she was by her mother's abandonment. I told him that I have had enough with this. I am living a nightmare half of my life, having to go on eggshells in my own home whenever she's around. My son is a prisoner in his own room when she's living with us, too terrified to cross a boundary of hers. I told him that I didn't know how to handle this and that it was a mistake from the beginning, that I wasn't allowed to be a parental figure in her life with authority. He disagreed and told me that she has a kind heart and needed patience, but the thing is I don't think she does. She targeted my son's handiwork, fully aware of its sentimental value, and my face because she always hated the fact that my husband thinks I am beautiful and is open with complimenting my eyes and smile. I didn't stay there for Christmas. I took my son and parents and went to my parents' home where I live now. My husband is in panic mode. He's been texting and calling me all the time trying to get me to move back and work things out. SD even texted apologizing. He probably made her, but I don't know what to do. I love him so much but I'm ashamed to say that I hate that girl. My son starts hyperventilating of the thought of living with her again. And what about my unborn baby? I feel sick of the thought of having half custody and being at the mercy of his half-sister when it's my husband's week. This thought makes me want to have a baby garbage day. Please tell me if there's another solution to this hell I'm living.